The 1822 series would be the closest the French army could have done in terms of standardization. This came after a long series of discussions and a request that was made by the Cavalry Committee to produce a sword that would be as good for cutting as for thrusting. The previous models of line cavalry were chiefly designed for thrusts rather than slashing. The 1816 sabre for the line cavalry was deemed to be excellent as a point-oriented sabre because the blade was crafted to be more balanced for that use. But some criticized it for its lack of potential for doing good cutting instead, something that even its predecessor, the year 11, was better at. The 1822 series thus provided the state and the army with a set of two swords that would be very close in shape, as both had the same type of hilt and curved blade. A few differences would distinguish the two. The line cavalry would have an extra branch, a slightly longer blade that would also be less curved than that of its little brother. The brass hilt was much like the previous model. It had 4 branches, but these were made more simple, having no button when they joined with the ridge of the hilt. The pommel form was kept the same, having a longer tail in the back and a short front. The grip was still wood covered with black leather and protected with brass wire. The blade was 97.5 centimeters long, of Montmorency type. It was on average 3 centimeters or 30 millimeters wide, and it had a hatchet-like point. It was marked with inspection stamps in the ricasso, but these were now placed horizontally rather than vertically. The back continued having the signature with the date of production. This would be the first but only attempt of a French heavy cavalry sword having a curved blade. Production started with Klingenthal from the year 1822 to 1829, after which date it was made by the manufacturer of Châtellerault, who received the contract to provide the army's weaponry. The officers now had their own version of the sword, which was the same shape as that of the troopers, except that the hilt was covered with gold gilt and embellished with floral decorations, and at the end of the branches and in the beak, having the royal lily as a decoration symbol. The blade and scabbard were also shined to a superior polish and made lighter. The rings on the scabbard were made thinner, and this is a good way to distinguish it from the trooper's scabbard. Since the officers were free to purchase their own swords, most of them ordered their 1822s from reputed markers such as Manceau, who stamped the scabbards and sometimes the hilt. The 1822 Bancal had been present in the most important campaigns of the century: the conquest of Algeria, the Crimean War, the Mexican expedition, the Second Italian War of Unification against Austria, the Franco-Prussian War, and the crushing of the Commune. This is perhaps the part that many of you are curious to know more about, since the sword is mostly infamous for the controversial nickname that it kept since it was first issued to the troops: Bancal. This word means something curved in French, but it also means, in a more pejorative way, something clumsy, moving awkwardly. Many experts and collectors focus on the second part, but overlook the first one, which is more on point with the parlance of the time. We have to thank and credit fellow collector Jean Bink for having shed light on this matter, as his own research had him question where the term bancal came from. And as of 1819, the word at the time only meant a curved sword or a curved furniture legs. But the curved sword term was because of the soldiers' vocabulary. At the time, the men always had a habit of always giving names to their swords. The year 11, for example, was called the lat. The light cavalry was the bancal. The short infantry sword was called the briquet. And the artillery gladius was called the coupe-chou, or cabbage cleaver. Arguably, none of these words had the same significance as they do today. A briquet is an apparatus used to produce fire, something which the briquet wasn't really meant for at the time. Then we take a look at the blade, which was already used since the Wars of the Revolution and afterwards. It was first exclusively given to the 2nd Chasseurs, formerly the Dragons de Montmorency, for their good conduct, and they used it with much pride during the campaigns of the Empire. Napoleon's own elite cavalry used it, and so did countless officers of the Line Cavalry who mounted these blades on their garde de bataille swords. So why would that sword last so long if it wasn't loved or if it was bad? The 1816, which wasn't a bad sword itself, was tossed aside for less than that. And it took 30 years and more to have a replacement for this sword, which is quite a long time for a sword's lifetime. No written records seem to indicate extensive critics or any call to urgently replace it. The 1854 that followed was mostly adopted as a political, nostalgic move rather than for operational purposes. Personally, I believe that this sword, despite being a novelty at the time, was not as hated as we are made to think, and that beneath a lack of good PR, it really achieved quite a good career and commands respect. So with this said, thank you very much for having watched the video in full. I'll be seeing you in the next one, which will be about the Light Cavalry 1822. So until then, thank you again and have a great day.